Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from Innova.buzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the Innova.buzz podcast today, local to me almost, from Melbourne in Australia, Didier Le Miere, who's the founder and director of the FixOn Media Group. Didier specializes in crafting brand story films, as he calls them, a modern approach to video marketing that uses highly relatable and emotive storylines to engage viewers and to communicate a brand's message effectively, and also to access the subconscious, so where people's feelings really shine. Welcome to the Innova.buzz podcast, Didier. It's a real privilege to have you as my guest.
Thank you, Jürgen. Really looking forward to our discussion today, and it's always good to be able to connect with a fellow Melbourne local. So thank you. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, excellent. Uh, I'm really looking forward to our conversation too, and I find it fascinating how you've combined your passion for storytelling and the video marketing expertise that you've built up over the years to create such a unique framework, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. Now, can you share more about what drives you in this mission and what impact you aim to make in the world today?
It's a really strong question to start off, and it's one that I've only just recently, probably 6 to 8 months ago, really been able to solidify and sort out what is the why and my driving factor behind things. And it came to me in a way where I was in this phase. I was probably trying to find out, what's my true why? What's the real drive behind what I do currently, what I want to do in the future, and everything that's gone before as well. And I was having a lot of conversations with different people, and they were saying this is their why and this is their driving force. And I didn't want to rush into finding what it was, because for me, if I rushed into something, it probably wasn't the true why or the true driving factor. And so there was one night I was really, really tired from probably 4 o'clock in the afternoon, super, super early, getting tired. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to lie down and have a bit of a rest. So I put the TV on, put on a movie, and I would have got halfway through the movie and something just clicked in my head. And I was like, that's it. That's my why. That's my driving factor. And that was, it's very simple on the service level, I suppose, but it's just bring happiness to people. It's bringing happiness to people through getting good results for my clients. It's bringing happiness to my friends and my family and those relationships that I have in my life. And for me, everything that I do in my life, and when I look back on what I've done in hindsight as well, every action that is taken is to provide happiness to people. And so going forward, there's not so much of the result that I'm wanting to get an outcome of. It's more, how do I become the person that I need to be able to give as much happiness to everyone around me?
It's fascinating. And what was the movie that kind of sparked that insight?
Yeah, it was about time. So it's a story about a teenage boy. He turns, I think it's 18 or 21, might be either or. And in the family, all the men, when they turn 18 or 21,
Yeah,
whichever the
yeah.
age was, they can time travel. And so he goes back in time and he redoes things until he gets it absolutely perfect and falls in love. And yeah, it's a really nice story.
Mm.
But for some reason in that movie, something just clicked in my head at the time. And I'm very grateful that that's occurred.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that movie. It's interesting. It's fascinating you talk about bringing happiness to other people, and yet just by you telling that story and sharing that with us in the conversation we've had in the past, it's clear to me that what you do brings you happiness as well. And so there's kind of that congruency there, isn't there? That's if it makes me happy, bringing other people happiness, and if what I do to bring other people happiness makes me happy, then everything kind of comes together.
Definitely. And I think for a lot of people, they do have the noble thought and the noble presence to say they want to make things better for everyone around them. And that's such a great initiative to be doing. But if it's at the cost of your own happiness or at the
Mm.
cost of your own self-worth, then what's the purpose behind giving that to other people when you need to look after yourself first? So yeah, I think you hit the nail right there. What I do through the video storytelling, through video marketing, through filming, that brings happiness to me, and I'm able to generate the results for clients by doing that, and that brings them happiness, of course. So it's a really good relationship back and forth there.
Mm. So how did you get into video and sort of discover that was something you really enjoyed doing?
I think for a lot of people, it starts off as a hobby, video, as a younger kid. So I was a big soccer player in my teenage years, and at the time I had the goal of becoming a professional goalkeeper for Manchester United. And so along with that, I went and picked up a little $200 camcorder from Harvey Norman. It would have been 2017, something like that, and just filmed all my games on there and analyzed my games. And I would create little highlights and what forth and send that off to coaches to have a look at. And over the school years, we would do different projects, different subjects. You got to do a video for this and a video for that. And I would dabble around with some mates, filming, editing, and doing all of that. And then I had this camera at home. I thought, look, we go on family holidays a couple times a year. Let's go and film the holiday. Let's film a family gathering, do a little video up for that. So I did a Christmas video and a different trip and all these little things. And so I think just over time doing that, even though the goal was to be this professional footballer, the hobby of the cameras was sitting there. And it wasn't until halfway through year 12, which was in 2021, where that really came to life, because during COVID, I got injured playing soccer, doing training nonstop with no games to stop that training in between. And that led to a 6-month layoff of no training. And so I lost the motivation and the goal to achieve. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do? I've got school finishing up at the end of the year. What am I going to do to move forward? And I had a boss at the time at a pizza shop locally, and he was dabbling in film as well. He'd done a fair bit of that over his life. He had the pizza shop, and then he was doing film as well. And his name was Michael. And he kind of just led me in that direction, knowing that I had the hobby for cameras at the time. And it got towards probably October of 2021. And he said to me, Didier, do you want to purchase my cameras? I'm upgrading. Do you want to purchase them secondhand? And so I said, yeah, sure, let's do it. So I brought the cameras and the lenses and all the other accessories that were needed for it secondhand off Michael. And that was my first taste of professional cameras. And that really was the driving force and the entry into the world of professional video.
Mm. So did you then jump straight into doing videos for businesses, or was there another step in between?
Straight into it.
Yeah.
Straight into it. Without any real thought behind what I was doing, without knowing how to run a business, how to market a business, how to make sales, how to do any of that. And again, I only just started with a professional camera, so I had to learn all of that as well at the same time. And I got asked this question the other day: what made you know that was the decision to make? And it was, at the time, it was just the environment that I was in, the information that I had around me. And for me, that was the most informed decision I could make, was take that jump. I've got nothing to lose, learn along the way. And so I spent the next 6 to 9 months learning the cameras, learning the business basics, and then launched the business in May of 2022. And that was the gateway into the professional world of video. And things have compounded from then. Things have gotten a lot stronger. I've learned a lot more, obviously. And in the past 12 months, things have just taken off, which is, the build up of all that over the years. But that initial jump into the world of professional video, there was no study in between. I'm very fortunate to have Michael. He's been a great mentor, and he's full-time in the industry now. He doesn't own the pizza shop anymore. And so he's been a great driving force. But it's just that mentorship, it's the dedication to learning on an ongoing basis, going out, researching, implementing it in real life, and just building on those skills over time.
Fascinating. And you came up with this concept somewhere along the way of the brand film framework and your unique approach to marketing. So walk us through what are the key areas of that framework and how they help brands connect with their audience and do so at a deeper level, as you sort of mentioned, or as I alluded to at the beginning.
Yeah, so the brand story film framework is something that I've introduced around about 12 to 18 months ago. And it came from the consideration of, how do I make my business, FixOn Media Group, a little bit unique, a little bit different to everything else out there, especially in the world of video with how fast it's moving, and social media is obviously heavily video based now. There's a lot of similarity between a lot of video marketing companies, video production companies. And so I was looking at a lot of the films that the top brands put out there, the likes of Apple, Dove, Reebok, Nike, Adidas, etc. And I was looking at their films versus brands whose films I didn't quite resonate with as much. And I was thinking to myself, why do I resonate with these films from these big brands versus not these ones over here? And so I analyzed them. I went through them a number of times and took different notes and had different feelings. And I found that the films that I resonated with the most were the ones that emotively captivated me the most. It was the ones that really pulled into my gut and made me feel something, and then made me want to act on those feelings at a later time. And the ones that didn't do so much were ones that didn't do that. They were just a bit stale. They're a bit the same in nature. And so this is where the development of the brand story film framework came in. It was from that. And it's a 4-step framework. And the whole reason behind it, as you alluded to there, is to formulate those emotive connections between brand and customer. And the reason it's so effective in today's day and age, I'll ask you the question, Jürgen, how often do you think, start again, how many ads do you think you see on a daily basis on average?
Probably 50 to 100.
Perfect. Yeah, 50 to 400 is the average across the world. It's a big range, of course, but it's a phenomenal number of advertisements. And that number's only increased year after year for the past 10 to 15 years. And so that's a problem, because for customers, they're sick and tired of seeing ads. I'm sick and tired of it. You're sick and tired of it. Everywhere we go, everywhere we look, there's an advertisement in front of us. And so we've kind of gotten to the point now where we don't really interact with ads anymore. We just see it and we just push it off. It doesn't even hit our minds. We don't even look at what it is in front of us. And for the business, that's a problem, because they have a message that they need to communicate to their customer, but the customer doesn't want to receive it. So how do you send that message to the customer without them really realizing it? And that's where these great films, the brand story film framework, comes into play, because you communicate the message that you have to your customers and do so in that subconscious, subtle way that you touched on at the start of the episode.
Yeah, it's fascinating, because as you were saying that, I was thinking, well, where do I see most of the ads? And it's actually on YouTube. So I've got an ad blocker on my computer that blocks the ads on YouTube, but I haven't worked out how to block them on my TV, on my smart TV. So when I watch some YouTubes on my smart TV, up come these ads. And the first thing that goes through my mind when I see an ad is not what's this ad about, or what are they trying to tell me, or anything. I say, how long before the skip button comes up so I can click it and get on with what I was wanting to watch.
Definitely.
And I said 50 to 100, and obviously some people say up to 400. And yet the follow-up question to that is, how many of those do you remember? And I'd have to say, well, from the last 24 hours, I can't even remember any advertisement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Because they didn't resonate with you. That's the plain and simple of it. And they were probably using the same traditional methods that have been around the entire video marketing industry for the past 10 to 15 years, which is loud, in your face, aggressive, frantic, all of these different variables. We just don't receive their message anymore. We're not receptive to it anymore. And hence that's why you need to come across in a little bit of a different manner, see if you can pull on the heartstrings of people, connect with them on an emotional level, and really drive that message through a subconscious manner.
So can you walk us through that 4-step framework? What are the
Certainly.
key points? Yeah.
So I'll list them off individually, the first 4, and then go back through if that's easier for you, just to dissect. So first and foremost, it's about understanding what is the true product or service of your business. From there, it's uncovering the impact of that true product or service, and there's going to be multiple impacts. So traditionally, you would focus a different video on each different impact. so you don't mix up the message. From there, you've got 3 different types of emotions that are associated with that impact. So you've got the emotions that a customer feels before they experience it, during, and then after they've experienced that impact. And then the fourth level of that framework is your business's core values and beliefs. So what is your business believe in, and how can we weave that into your message to connect with not just the audience, but the right audience, the ones that are going to be your ideal customer. So that's the 4 steps. So if we go back up to the first step there, true product or service. One of the ways I like to look at it to explain it to people is if you look at an airline, everyone knows what an airline sells. They sell a ticket from point A to point B. Very, very surface level. With this question, it's a little bit of a probing question. So what is your true product or service? It's about diving a little bit deeper, going beneath surface level, and the more complex, the more deep an answer that you can provide, the easier it is to uncover the impacts and the emotions that are associated with that true product or service. So if we take that question, what is a true product or service for an airline? We take that a little bit deeper from just being a point A to point B ticket. One possible response for that could be they're able to connect people no matter the distance, no matter the circumstance, no matter the occasion, and connect them via any port of the world. That's taking it a little bit deeper. And you can go deeper and you can go deeper and you can go deeper. And the more deep an answer, as I mentioned, the better it is. So from there, you've been able to uncover, in this case, let's say it's Qantas, right? Qantas's true product or service is being able to connect to people no matter distance, no matter the circumstance, no matter the occasion, and connect them together. So then that goes down to that second step. What are the true impacts of the true product or service? And there's going to be multiple. So one example, and we'll touch on this through a real life example that Qantas presented, is a mother and her son disconnected during COVID because of the border closures, and then being able to reconnect them for the mother's 60th or 70th birthday, I think it was, from memory. And this is a real story as well, by the way. So that's one possible impact. Outside of that, you could say maybe the grandparents live overseas and they're coming over to Australia for the first time to see their newborn grandkids. That's a possible impact. It could be the businessman is able to get from New York to London in time so he can get to the meeting and close a big deal. There's so many different impacts, and each impact is going to be the foundation for the relatable story for the brand story film, which we'll touch on a little bit later. So from there, we've been able to identify the true product or service and the possible impacts of that. So what are the associated emotions? If we look at this example of the son and the mother separated during the border closures, before they experience the impact of Qantas being able to connect them, no matter the circumstance, no matter the distance, they've probably got a little bit of guilt that they're feeling. They're probably very upset, lonely, a bit of anger perhaps. And you'll see when you do this type of exercises, a lot of the emotions are very similar with the before, during, and after. But it's just about getting that specific one for each impact, which is key. If you flip that question, what is it after they experience the impact when they're back together? They'd be over the moon. They'd be joyful. They'd be happy. They would be excited to see each other. There'd probably be a bit of gratitude in there as well. Thankful that they're able to connect with each other again after such a long time. So it's these emotions that then form the foundation for the brand story film and the storyline around that. And then finally, the fourth pillar of that framework is the core values and beliefs of the business. And this is where you really get unique, because up to this point, you could pretty much formulate the same 3 responses for any business within a certain industry, because it's all very generalized in that nature. But the core values and beliefs is what's going to separate your business from another business. And it's those core values and beliefs that are going to be able to connect you with your ideal customer, because the ideal customer for most businesses is a customer that has the same core values, the same core beliefs as what you hold, because you're able to connect with each other more. You think about the friends that you've got, Jürgen. you would be able to connect with them on a certain level, whether it be through sport or through art or whatever it may be. They would hold similar core values and beliefs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very much the same for businesses, and that's where you bring it into that unique framework.
Mm.
So that's the four steps of that framework there. So identifying your true product or service as a business. What are the impacts, both one to a multitude of however many that you have, and again, the deeper you can go there, the better. Then what are the associated emotions before, during, and after of each of those impacts? And then to round it all out, what are your core values and beliefs as a business?
That's really comprehensive, and it does require, like the business that's advertising that wants to create this video, to really give some deep thought into a lot of things. And I imagine that the core values, particularly in larger organizations, is I know from my time in the corporate world, the core values is something that was, I don't think, really clear at a corporate level. And I know in my own experience at a time when I'd been with a company for 21 years and started to feel really unhappy, that it was a values shift. It was a values shift of the organization, and then a misalignment with my own values that I sort of realized many years later. At the time, I was just unhappy. I didn't realize what was at the core of that unhappiness, other than, the day-to-day technical stuff that was annoying me. And yet, sort of to get at that, to understand that, I imagine is a big challenge. So how do you go about helping people get to those things? I'm thinking kind of coming up with the first levels. The story might be fairly easy, and then building a story around that's probably relatively easy. Getting to the emotional aspects of that's where the challenges start. But the core values, I think that's where the real challenge lies for many organizations.
I definitely agree with that. And just to touch on your example there, that shift in values and beliefs, did that come from an executive leadership change by chance? Or was that just a thing that happened over time with the same people in the same roles?
It was a little bit of both. I think it was happening slowly over time, and it was sort of not something that I was aware of really. It was just sort of, there was an evolution there that was working towards values that were not really aligned with me anymore. But yes, there were then some key leadership changes. And I think they probably were in part a consequence of that slow shift in values, and then leadership positions changed because probably those leaders were no longer, their values were no longer aligned with where the values of the organization was going. So it's kind of, I think it was a bit of both. Um,
Yeah, that would make sense to me. Small business is very easy to uncover their core values and beliefs because traditionally you've got one owner or you've got two owners in a partnership, and they would build the foundations of their business based on their own core values and beliefs. But of course, when you go up to the larger businesses and the enterprises, you've got multiple leadership teams, you've got multiple executives, and each of them are working towards their strategic goals over 5-10 years. And those core values and beliefs would shift over time, not just based on the leadership team that are in those roles at the moment, because of course the core values and beliefs are going to come from what they believe in as well, but it's also going to shift based on the strategic objectives of the business as they change over time. And so to answer your question of how can a business uncover what those core values and beliefs are, I think a lot of it at the start is twofold. It's one, asking the current customers that you have, what is it that they can see within your own business? So doing a little bit of an analysis there and asking them, what do they see within your business around what they believe that you value or that you believe in? And then flipping the question and asking them as well and saying, what do you value? What do you believe in? And see if there's a little bit of a correlation between responses. And if you're seeing a consistent result come up within the clientele that you have, then maybe a bit of that is to do with they're the type of customer that you're attracting. And that goes back to that core value belief sharing before, the ideal customers that you have will share the same core values and beliefs that you have. So if you're attracting a certain value or a certain belief, then maybe lean into that if that's the right way that you want to take things.
Mm.
And then the second part of that fold is looking historically, looking in hindsight, and not asking the question, but just observing over the top and thinking, okay, what is the characteristic of this customer? What's the characteristic of this customer? And trying to see if you can identify a trend. That would probably be the best starting point. And then from there, you can go back and look into yourself and say, okay, what are the strategic goals that we're wanting to achieve? What are the beliefs and values that we need to achieve that? As an individual myself, or as a collective individual, as a leadership team, what do we believe in? What do we value? And then taking that from there and seeing how you can portray that within not just your marketing, but your everyday business operations as well.
Mm. Yes, bringing it into the operations, and also coming back to our topic, the videos and connecting with customers, is how do you build that connection through those values? What are the roles they play? One of the things you mentioned before, and I think it was part of the framework, is how do I differentiate? It was in your example of the airlines, because the first three things you talked about could have been any airline if you hadn't mentioned a name. But then the fourth one is that values thing which differentiates. So how do you help brands stand out and build that connection through the video, through kind of telling those stories that actually highlight or bring to life, if you like, for the viewer, the audience, that those values and what makes this company different, that delivers these experiences and these outcomes?
Yeah, so let's continue with that Qantas example, because it's a very well-known brand. It's very easy to understand being an airline. What do we know of Qantas? We know that they like to be called the spirit of Australia. They have, over the years, used the songs of "I Still Call Australia Home" and "It Feels Like Home to Me" as their tunes for their marketing. So that's kind of driving along some of their core values and beliefs within all that. They're saying that they are a fellow Australian in that sense, that they value that, what's the word, the patriotism of being an Australian. They value that. They believe in being Australians and supporting Australians. And I'm sure if we went onto the Qantas website, we'd be able to uncover a little bit more around that. But let's just stick at that surface level for now. So then it's, how can we create a storyline around that is going to stand out? It's going to be different to a competitor, such as a Virgin Australia, such as a Jetstar, even though Jetstar, of course, owned by Qantas. But how can that stand out from a different airline, even or overseas? And so if we go back to this example of this film that they created in 2023, the mother disconnected from the son after COVID. It comes from that true product or service, which is the connection anytime, no matter the circumstance, no matter the distance, brings them together to incorporate this impact. And the impact being that they're able to connect with each other for her birthday. And then it has all the emotions with that. The relatable situation there that we can all relate to as humans is that we've been separated from a family member for a certain period of time, and we've come back together to celebrate an occasion, and we've experienced that joy and that gratitude that they would be feeling in that moment. And so Qantas would have gone through, maybe not specifically our framework, but a similar framework that achieved the same objectives, and would have looked back and thought, okay, this is the impact, these are the emotions, this is true product or service, this is what we believe in. How do we then craft a storyline around that? And so that's where you lean into the impact being they're separated. And so they created that storyline. He was separated from her. He was in Tokyo. She was in Melbourne. There's the birthday celebration just past COVID, so the border restrictions are kind of easing. We need them to feel anger, guilt, sadness at the start of the film. That hooks people in because it's a bit different, right? We go back to what we talked about advertisements before. They're loud, they're aggressive, they're in your face, they're frantic. So you're completely changing that by introducing a little bit of a somber feeling to viewers straight away. And that instantly is something different. And as we know, humans are attracted to things that are a little bit different.
And there's
It's something
an element of intrigue there too, isn't there, with that whole
100%.
storyline? Because I could imagine if it succeeds in hooking you in the first instance, then the next one of the other emotions you're likely to feel there is, oh, what's going to happen here? How's this going to end?
Yeah, 100%. You're intrigued to know what is the outcome of this. Because you can picture yourself in that situation and you're trying to think, okay, if I'm in this situation in the future, what's the outcome for me? What do I get out of this? And so that's where the storyline continues. You have that Cinderella arc, if you want to call it, where it starts off nice and slow and somber, and it comes back up, and then it drops back down again because she loses the shoe and the prince can't get in touch and all that, and then it pops back up at the end, right? So it's the same thing here. It starts off nice and somber, and then there's this connection point that increases the stakes a little bit, where they're on the phone and the mother's saying, "Oh, I'm moving out of the family home. Look at all these memories." And so you start to get a bit emotional, and you go, "Oh, that's sad. They're moving out the family home." Again, relatable. And then it drops back down again because they show that separation. He's like, "Oh, I can't come back for your birthday party." And she's like, "Oh, that's a bit disappointing. You're going to miss out and all that." And so then they go and show the process of him getting his stuff ready to go, going to the airport, boarding the plane. And then you start to see that arc rise a little bit more. And then they turn up to Polperro Winery on the Mornington Peninsula, and he taps her on the shoulder and she turns around and she goes, "Oh, geez," it's the surprise and the shock that he's there. And that's the pinnacle of the film. That's the peak of the film. And the celebrations are there. And that's the whole storyline. You can see it all coming through there. We can see their tripartite service, albeit, as you touched on, generalized. We can see the impact, which has then brought us a relatable storyline that we can lean into. We've had that emotional roller coaster going from those before emotions through to the after, where there's the gratitude and the happiness. And within all that, we can see those values of Qantas shining through. The spirit of Australia feels like home. He's come from Tokyo, he's come back to Melbourne, he's come home. We can feel that. He's come back to Australia, we can feel that. And so that's how it all intertwines, and that's how you can tell that relatable story, be emotively captivating, and really connect with your audience on a much deeper level than what you get through traditional advertising, where it's all about blasting your message to everyone. Because Jürgen, just from listening to that, and if you were to watch the film later on, it's only a 60-second film, you'd probably be able to subtly pick up a message beneath all of that, but it's not bang in your face straight away like you get in an advertisement, right?
And it's something you remember. I mean, there's no message there about, oh, there's a special deal, or the flights are cheaper this month, or whatever it might be. It's really just that message of, and now that you've described the rest of the story, I actually remember it. I've seen it. And there's that memories there of, there's that story and it relates to Qantas. So, and that's all that I really need to know, because
Exactly right.
unconsciously, the moment I'm looking for an airline ticket, somewhere in my unconscious, that memory is going to pop up, and then I'm going to think of Qantas.
Exactly right. It's all about being front of mind in the correct moment when it needs to occur. And if you've got a similar belief and value system that Qantas have, so for example, you're very patriotic to Australia and you love that Australian spirit, then you're probably going to lean towards going towards a Qantas flight in a situation like that versus a competitor airline, whichever airline that may be, just because you have that a little bit more of a connection to them versus a company that you don't have that connection to.
All right, that's fascinating. So we've analysed a commercial example, and here's a bit of a challenge for you. If you could create a brand story film for yourself, so not for your company, but for Didier the person, what would the storyline be? What would the emotions and messages be that you want to send to your audience?
I think it would be along the lines of when you're wanting to achieve something, you go at it at 100%. You don't half-ass it. You don't give 90%. You go all out and you work towards achieving something. So if we were to look at my life and look back, it's the dedication and the discipline towards the training, going for that professional soccer player goal, then going into business and giving that as my all. And that would be the foundation of the storyline there. And the core values and the beliefs there is the dedication and the grit and the hard work and the message that would be coming through subconsciously is, as I touched on, if you're going to do something, give it your all. And I think that would be a foundational storyline for a brand story film around me as an individual. Yeah.
That's fascinating. All right, I'll give you another hypothetical.
Sure.
Since you did so well on that one. If you could design a video campaign to change, let's say, a societal mindset or something that involves solving a global issue, first of all, what would you choose? What would you focus on, and how would you approach it?
So just to reiterate with that question there, in terms of what would we focus on, are you after a specific social change, social impact, or just how we would focus on achieving that goal?
Actually, both, because I'm curious to see what you're passionate about, because that then aligns with your values, and clearly that might make it easier.
Sure. I'll provide a real life example. I won't be able to disclose the names behind it,
Sure.
but I'll provide the real life example. So in May of last year, we had a government organization approach us, and it was to work towards achieving a very monumental target that was hit, or that was wanting to be achieved by the federal government. And they wanted to do a video campaign around it. So we looked at the goal that was wanting to be achieved over the longevity of that strategic goal. And we looked at where they were at now, where they were projected to be in 5 years' time. And there was quite a big gap between where they were now and where they wanted to get to. And so we had to do a little bit of an audit around how are we actually going to be able to change the cultural shift, because the reason there was such a big gap between where they wanted to go and where they are currently is because over the years, people have been moving away from this certain area and they've been moving to other areas. So how do we change that status quo and start getting people attracted to doing this again? So we provided them with a strategy and a framework for how we were going to do that. It involved a long form brand story film. It involved numerous short form video marketing strategies that were going to be on an ongoing basis to keep everything front of mind and help over time, hopefully change that status quo. Ultimately, they didn't go ahead with our proposal. And I think that might have actually just dropped the video side of things altogether, because they haven't actually done anything at all. And that's what you get with government departments. They change their minds very quickly. But to answer your question there, and try and bring this back into how it would change social attitudes, it's definitely a lot harder of a job to achieve than what it is when you're just trying to connect with a certain customer. But you can lean into that a little bit and use that to your advantage, because if you're wanting to change society from where they are to where they need to be, then there's some sort of bridge they have to they have to cover, some sort of gap they have to bridge to be this new individual. And that new individual is going to have a different set of beliefs, a different set of values, a different set of characteristics, variables, etc. So to bridge that gap, it would be about making these new variables so much more attractive than where they are at currently and what they hold currently. So it would be a thing of using those emotions, going towards that anger, the guilt, the sadness, leaning to those type of emotions, the before emotions, and highlighting that this is what they have currently. And if they want to achieve the dream outcome of the happiness and the joy and all that goes with that, then that's this gap they have to bridge to achieve it. And they have to change their beliefs and their values to achieve that. Does that make a little bit of sense?
Yeah, it does make a little bit of sense. And I'm kind of thinking, because we've touched on social media, and in today's age with so much social media around, and also the artificial intelligence that's kind of taking over our lives in some ways, there's so much misinformation out there. And we're seeing signs of this. I don't want to get too political here, but we're seeing signs of this in the political landscape in particular, of people just buying the narratives that they're being fed rather than bringing the ability to think critically about something that they've read or something that they've seen and saying, well, hang on, does that make sense? Or can that be true? Can that be right? Is there a way that I can test this? Or can I put my hand up and say, I've got a question here, I want to challenge that, I want to find out more. So this idea of critical thinking to combat, if you like, misinformation campaigns that are actively being used to manipulate people. That's something I think is kind of a challenge. That's a big one. If we can get more people thinking critically and saying, well, okay, I agree with that, but I agree with that based on the fact that I've questioned it. I've questioned all the information, and I've analysed it. I've thought critically about it, and I agree with it, not because it's manipulated me into taking a certain position, or alternatively, of course, saying I don't agree with any of this information here. It's false information, and so my viewpoint is over here.
Definitely would agree with that. It's very key to formulate the judgment. If we look at the Brand Story films there, it sounds a little bit manipulative because you're giving them this subconscious message and you're trying to mix with their emotions and what forth. But at the end of the day, the consumer still has to make their own decision. They still have to look within themselves and say, based on the information that is provided to me in this moment, based on the information that's provided to me in the moment that makes me want to take action, is this the best decision to make? Is it not? If it is, then go for it. If it's not, then we don't do it. And so that leans into what you're touching on there with the political landscape. People still need to formulate their own decisions. They can't just take what is given to them and go with it. They should be being critical in their thinking and looking at it and analyzing it and saying, okay, is this what I should do, or should I do something a little bit different? So I think, yeah, definitely agree with your point there, Jürgen.
Excellent. Well, I mean, we've touched on lots of different areas and we could go on for ages, but I'm just aware of the time, and I think it's a good point now to move on to our buzz round. It's the same 5 questions that I ask of every guest. It's a lightning round, with the idea that you'll share some tips from your experience that'll inspire our listener to go and do something awesome as a result today. So you all set?
Fantastic. Looking forward to it.
What's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
To be more innovative, people need to sit back and observe and identify what can be changed. And if it doesn't need to be changed, how can it be improved to be a little bit quicker, a little bit more efficient, a little bit better? That would be my response to that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you kind of incorporated there as not everything needs to be changed, but it is innovative to do marginal improvements on things.
Definitely.
Great. What's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
The best thing I've done to develop new ideas is when I've felt like I need to take action and I need to do it right now, take a step back, sleep on it, take a week, take multiple weeks if I need to, and then come back to it and look at it then and see, is this actually what needs doing? And in doing so, giving myself that space and time to really consider what is actually the true action that needs to be taken from there.
Yeah, that's a great strategy. Sometimes it's we kind of get pressured into making quick decisions, and sometimes taking that time to consider or even just park it, not even think about it for a day or a week, and coming back to it with a fresh perspective, sometimes is the quicker way to do it, or certainly the more effective way. All right, what's one of your favourite resources?
People. And that can come across in a bad way potentially. But I think leaning into the people that you have around you, and they have to be qualified people, of course. If you're wanting to achieve a level 10 goal, but you're talking to someone at level 2 and trying to get their perspective on it, it's not a relevant thought and talking discussion there. So finding the relevant people around you that have the experience that can provide real genuine advice, that would be my tip in terms of in terms of that.
Yeah, well, you mentioned early in our conversation the role of your mentor, who's obviously a really important person in your life and in your professional journey as well. So yeah, that's a great example of that.
Definitely, yeah. People, everything. And if we bring it back to the business operation side of things, people are, of course, the biggest resource. So lean into their skills, lean into their expertise. You don't have to be the one that knows everything. Hire the people that know more than you, and lean into their education and their expertise, and really grow collectively all together.
Yeah, I love it. I love that. It's a different philosophy, isn't it? You don't have to know everything. It's certainly when I first started out as an entrepreneur, I kind of had carried this weight on my shoulder. I got to know how to do all these things. And it was actually a big mindset shift of saying, well, I need to have a kind of a bit of an insight into what's going on, but I don't need to know the details of this, because clearly somebody else is likely to be better qualified to actually understand the detail here and to run whatever that process is. All right, what's the best way to keep a client on track?
The best way to keep a client on track? Well, this is interesting from our perspective, because a lot of our work is done for you, one-on-one, done for you. So we're kind of the ones ticking things forward. Very few projects that we work on, or strategies, the 12-month plus, we're facilitating the action and needing the client to do that on our behalf. But I think if we look at it from a macro perspective, it would just be that accountability. And I'll give a great example. I've got a personal trainer that I started with probably 3 months ago now. And each week I'll just get a text and a form that I have to fill out. So that the text would just be from him, and he'll just say, hey, how's the body feeling? Is everything going all right? And then every Friday there's a form that I have to fill out that I just touch on what I did in the past week, progress-wise, am I hitting all the goals? How's the body feeling? Is there any injuries, pain, etc.? And that just keeps me accountable to achieving the result that he's trying to get for me. And so I think if you've got a similar client base where you're needing them to take action on your behalf to achieve the desired outcome, it's just being accountable, staying in touch with them all the time. I think another great example, and Hormozy talks about it a lot, where in his gyms he would make sure no one ever missed twice. So that third time that they miss is where you start to see a little bit of churn come through. And so if they didn't turn up for a class 1 week, you just send a little text and say, hey, don't forget to come to the next one, and they're there for the next one. And then you increase that cadence the more times they miss it. So if they've missed it twice and you don't want them to hit that third one, maybe send them a couple texts in the week leading up to that third one. So again, that's just about being accountable and helping the client take action on your behalf.
and good communication there as part of that, obviously.
Most definitely.
Excellent.
100%.
All right. And we've talked a little bit about differentiating. What do you think is the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
I would lean into the core values and beliefs because I really believe that that is such a key differentiator. We all have similar core values and beliefs to some degree. On a macro level, of course, there's very big variance, but there's people that would have, even my friends and I, your friends and yours, would have similar beliefs, but they'd still be a little bit different because at the end of the day, our core values and beliefs are unique to us and they're different to the next person. So no matter how similar another company is, no matter how similar another individual is, there will still be that little bit of difference between what they believe and what they value. So I think leaning into that would be the best way to become differentiator within your market or as an individual.
Yeah. I'd probably add to that, certainly I agree with you on the core values, but I'd add to that in terms of uniqueness, whilst I've got a lot of friends with whom I share a lot of core values, and if we just dug into kind of the first level, perhaps, they might very well be identical. But in terms of experiences that we've had, they're really unique. So combining the experiences with the core values, because how often do you meet up with your best friend who, your core values are kind of just like that, and you have a conversation that goes something like, "You'll never believe what happened to me today."
Yes, exactly
Yeah.
right. 100%. I definitely would agree with that. Experiences, no one has the same experience.
Yeah.
Even if you're doing the exact same thing at the same time, it's completely different.
Yes.
100% agree.
So it comes back to knowing yourself and when it's on a business level, knowing the business really well and bringing those core values and the experiences that kind of mesh with those together really well.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a great differentiator. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks, Didier. This has been absolutely fabulous. Really enjoyed the conversation. Now, where can people find out more about FixOn Media, about you, and maybe even reach out and say thanks for what you shared with us today?
Yeah, so to find out more about FixOn Media, just head to our website. So FixOn, FIXON, and finale, media, media.com.au. If you want to reach out directly to myself, do head to LinkedIn and just search up for my name, Didier Le Miere, Didier, and then LE space MIERE. I practically live on LinkedIn. I'm there every day, posting, commenting, engaging, everything. So I live on there. So if you send me a message on there, I will definitely reply to you.
Excellent. All right. And of course, we'll have those links in the show notes as always. So as we wrap it up, what action would you like our listener to take out of our conversation today, Didier?
I think the biggest outcome that I would love for your listeners to take away is don't just sit on the surface level. If you're wanting to really gather results, whether that be in your video marketing or it be in any other objective or goal within your business, is don't just stick to that surface level. Go a little bit deeper, try to uncover what's the ticking that's underneath the ground. And from there, you're going to be able to generate deeper insights, more thorough conversation, and that's going to only be beneficial to helping you achieve your goals.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a wonderful call to action. So thanks for that. And thanks so much for sharing your wisdom and insights with us so generously today, Didier. Really enjoyed the conversation. All the best for the future, and let's stay in touch.
Thank you, Jürgen. Appreciate it. And as I touched on at the start, always great to connect with a fellow Melburnian. So thank you for your time. Thanks for your listeners' time. And yeah, looking forward to keeping in touch and talking in future.